The government itself does not produce anything. They have citizens who, most of them are employees, and so they take their tax and that's how they get their money. On paper, you feel like you have an increased salary of 65,000. Last year it was 60,000. You should be feeling like I can buy more in year 2. But somehow it's not mooring. More is not mooring. Although you are getting more salary, because the cost of goods are increasing, more of that extra salary that you are getting is actually being taxed at a higher rate. You don't have to belong to one box. You should try to get the best of all the boxes. You can be an employee and have a limited company at the same time. You can also have a limited company and still be self-employed at the same time. If you are smart enough and you get your bill all the way down to 0, you might not pay any tax.
Hello everyone, welcome to this week's episode of the Mr. Money Jar Show. We are joined this week by Benedicta, your favourite accountant, and my accountant actually. And we had a great conversation this week about the autumn budget, which at the time of recording was last month, and the way in which it affects the Black community specifically. We tried to break down what is, to many, the biggest government announcement of the year in a way which is easily digestible by people from the community. And we tried to pinpoint the different ways in which it's likely to affect us for the rest of this year and in 2026. And we even come up with things that we think the government could do to stimulate growth and entrepreneurship and a growing economy in the country as well. One of the things that I love about speaking with Benedicta is we don't just focus on the problems, we focus on the solutions as well. So this is another cracking episode from her. If you've seen any of her podcasts before, I just know you're going to be in for a treat. So do stick with us for a great episode. And if you enjoy all of the content that I've been putting out for the Mr. Money Jar Show, do make sure to subscribe. Benedicta, do introduce yourself and let us know what you do.
Hi, I am Benedicta, your favourite accountant. I'm still going with that one, although we're doing more than just accounting and many other things like training accountants. But yeah, ultimately, I'm your favourite accountant. And I am the founder of Benny Ratio Finances. I call myself a finance professional. Even in my 9-to-5 life, I've only ever worked in finance with Benny Ratio. Obviously, I'm helping the nation, I want to believe, understand tax. Actually, I can say that, helping the nation, because I was on BBC this year twice. So yeah, helping the nation understand about finance and engage with the tax system, understand how to navigate what to do. But ultimately, I run an accountancy practice, and I do talks like this, trying to explain the complicated jargon. I always say, most accountants, you probably don't want to talk to them. Even I don't want to talk to fellow accountants, but I call myself your favorite accountant because I try to make it relatable. I try to make it interactive, fun, etc. If it can be as fun as it can be, anyway. So yeah, Benedicta, your favorite accountant.
Yeah, and my favorite accountant. Well, my accountant.
10 over 10 for that one.
Yeah, so no, it's been so great working with you these last, I want to say 3-4 years.
Yes.
With Mr. Money Jar, and I think you've really seen me grow as an entrepreneur and my business grow, but you've been instrumental to the growth of my business and to the latest season of this podcast coming out. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Just to say as well, actually, just because we are at the end of the year and I don't know when this is going to go live, but just talking about that, it's been a couple of years. I was talking with my team this week and we were literally saying, so we're talking about planning for the next year. And one of the things that my assistant reminded me, my finance manager reminded me, which I was really proud of. She was like, do you know what? Our customers are making more money. And for me, I think that's a really big testament to just everything. And just because you mentioned Mr. Money Jar, where we've started 2-3 years ago, all of my customers are hitting it, doing so much more than they were. And so, yeah, it's been a good journey.
I'd like to ask you a question I've never asked you explicitly before. And it's, what about your upbringing led to this interest that you have in finance?
Very good question. So I think I've shared this, maybe not all the time. I try to keep my private life private. But yeah, on a personal note, so I am the first of 4 children, and I grew up in a very Nigerian household, but also from a single parent household. So my parents were together until I was about 10, 11, and officially from 11, it was just my mum. And so, yeah, you can imagine finances in any African first immigration, like my parents being first generation to come and me being first generation born here, it plays a large part. I don't know about so many people, but at least for the circle that we were in, when my parents came, they were doing like cleaning jobs. My mum's a qualified nurse now and she's retired and stuff, but that's not where she started. That is definitely not where she started. And my dad as well, at least for the years when we were together, he was doing all kinds of odd jobs as well, a bit of minicab driving, cleaning as well, with my mom. And he did have a business at some point as well. My parents are serial entrepreneurs and from a business point of view, both here and in Nigeria. But especially when they split up, finances was a major thing. My parents were quite, I don't say lucky, blessed, smart, savvy, whatever it was, to actually get property quite early. So I remember us moving into a lovely big house when I was 11. But unfortunately, because the relationship broke down, my mum at that time she wasn't professionally qualified to be able to afford such a mortgage
Mm.
on her own anyway. And so, yeah, finances played a big part. And I remember as a child just going into secondary school. In fact, the first term, the first half a year in year 7, I actually went to private school. So my parents actually, they had that level of money, but mismanagement, misunderstanding, and then, like I say, relationship breakdown meant that that couldn't continue. We also moved houses, which meant my private school was also very far away, but also financially, it was no longer viable. So I remember, like I said, being the first. The reason why I started with being the first of 4 children is because my mum would literally say to me, look, you need to go and ask your dad for money. Like, your siblings can't speak. My baby brother at the time, he's not so much of a baby anymore. He was 1 years old. She's like, he can't go, but you can. And I remember having to sometimes take the bus after school for this is very personal, by the way, very long journeys to go to see my dad to ask him for like pocket money, school dinner money and all of that. My mum was working in Greg's at the time, single parent, 4 children in a massive new house that they had just bought. It was not affordable. Needless to say, that house, anyway, I won't talk about the details, but needless to say, we didn't have that house for very long after that period. And so there was a time, so after quote unquote struggling through secondary school, when I was going to college, there was a time when I had to do something, you want to buy new things for the new phase of school. And I remember having to ask my father for money, and he said he was going to give it to me. And then a couple of days later, he said I should come and get it in a couple of days' time. And a couple of days' time, when I called to go and get it, he was in another country. And I was like, what? And this is not to put my dad on blast, but you can imagine 16-year-old me. And I literally vowed that day, between me, myself, and God, I said, I will never, ever, number one, ask my father for money ever again in my life. And God is my witness. I have never. Um, and I'm way older than 16. So number one, I will never ask my father. But number two, you see this thing called money? I'm going to understand it. I'm going to make it. I'm going to have it. I'm going to multiply it. I am going to be okay financially. And so that was my personal resolution from that whole scenario. Obviously, there was a lot of tension, a lot of things built up, but that was the moment. I remember being on the bus and seeing that. I was just like, okay, no problem. We're going to do this. And so for me, and also there is the natural inclination as well. So from a mathematical point of view, I like numbers. I'm good with numbers. I understand numbers. I remember winning competition as a child, for maths competition. So I think the combination of my mathematical ability and my desire to never be in a position whereby somebody could let me down because I needed finances and they couldn't give it to me. The combination of those two things literally drove me to be like, yeah, let's understand it and all of that. And then, yeah, doing accounting, and the rest, they say, is history.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. We've spoken many, many times. I didn't know all those things about you. And in everything you shared, I both see you and feel seen. I'm the eldest of 3.
Yeah.
My parents split up when I was 11.
Oh, wow.
And my dad spent a lot of time going back and forward from England to Nigeria. And it's just very interesting how I even went to private school year 6 to year 9, then had to be pulled out because of, I went to Dulwich College.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's really interesting how these life experiences shape and mold us, and you both end up like on a podcast together talking about a similar
Talking about the
topic,
same thing,
but
right?
like, you know, these things, they clearly have an effect. So
Absolutely. But just because your story is kind of similar as well, I would say it also goes to bring out the importance of marital relationship. Let me not even explicitly say marital relationship. Yes, ideally marital relationship, but I would say partnership, because in your story, and I guess in my story as well, this financial stability of even the children, once the parents split up, it wasn't sustainable anymore. You went to private school for 3 years. I went to private school for the first half of year 7 and all of that. And you can see where if the parents had stayed together, and obviously if it was an ideal relationship and it was working, which I hope us generation, we're going to have that. You can see how actually the children can thrive and have that stability. And who knows, maybe if you had finished your private school and I had finished my private education, maybe we'll be talking on a different table
yeah,
and not on a podcast.
yeah, yeah. um but also, I think it should be said that podcasts for me, I think, are one of the most, if not the most valuable content format at the
Absolutely.
moment. I happen to think
Absolutely.
they're the new TV.
Yeah.
And you have the distinction of achieving 500,000 views at least on
Yeah.
your episode with Atto from Savvy
Yeah.
Wallet. So
That was not expected.
yeah, no, it's because you're good and you're
Oh,
great, and you break down finances in a way which is relatable,
thank
which we'll
you.
hopefully do today.
Yes, 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 yes.
So just to set it up, both for you and the listeners, there are kind of three angles that I want to cover in today's conversation. We have, at the time of recording, just had the budget, which
Mm-hmm.
some would say is the largest government announcement of the year.
Yeah.
And it's where the government, we had the autumn budget, and it's where the government sets out the changes which will come in at the start of the next tax year,
Mm-hmm.
which is on the 6th of April, 2026. These announcements are all encompassing and cater to the entire country. So the first thing I'd love us to do is talk about how such a government announcement impacts the Black community specifically.
Mm.
The second thing is, I'd like us to speak about it in a way which would be of interest to our community, because we're not always tapped into things on the government and political side of things.
Yeah, that is actually where I was going to start. I was going to say it's actually quite funny that you say, how does the budget apply to, the ethnic minority community, the Black community in particular? You're right. At the face of it, I don't think that when policies are put in place, they are thinking, how does this affect Asians? How does this affect Blacks? How does this affect, I don't think they're thinking about that. They are thinking about the majority. And obviously, many of us, if not all of us, majority of us are immigrants. Even if you are not, or even if your parents are not, at some point, somebody came from somewhere into the UK. And so I think that in itself, and I try, it's so funny because, even on other podcasts where we talk about this kind of stuff, it's hard sometimes to talk about these kinds of things without going into policy. Obviously, this is not about, we're not politicians or whatever, but I think that in itself is something that actually needs to change. And if anyone happens to listen to me, I think that they do need to have representation. We talk about D&I and diversity in boardrooms and in, FTSE companies and in, schools or whatever. We need to start talking about representation at the policy level, because ultimately the laws of the United Kingdom have at some point, even if not right now, although they do, but at some point have encouraged migration or, immigration into the country from other countries, continents. I'm not going to just say Black, but from other places. But when these people have come here, you have not actually catered to them. And I think that the responsibility, and I'm going way off here, but I do think that there is a responsibility for the British government to own up and say, look, at some point we let these people in. Now these people are here. What can we do to also serve them?
Yeah.
I think that many policies in the years gone by were very immediate focus. They thought about, there's the Windrush generation. There are the people who came in to do, the healthcare stuff. You didn't think about the fact that these people would get married and have children and children and children and children. And now we have what we call Black British, whereby you've got people like us who we are literally 50-50, grown up in very African or whatever, place you've come from, Jamaican, Caribbean households because your parents came from there. But you've literally never lived a day in Nigeria in your life or in the Caribbean. You only maybe have gone there for holiday, if at all, because I know people who have never gone to those countries. So yeah, like I say, I digress. But in terms of how the the budget affects us, I would say, like I say, starting at that point, it is not tailored to us, and so therefore we have to almost like, if the budget is catered for this big box of people and maybe it's catered to help the majority, the Black community is like one small portion of that big box. And so actually we have to zoom down. I love the kind of content that you do, whereby you actually do the research, get the statistics to say, right, the Black community, how much do we have? How much do we own? We talked about this a couple of times, on socials. How many of us actually own property? How many of us are earning above six figures? How many of us are into business? And so we need to look at that small box and then begin to apply it. I would say, of course, it does not, you can't, there's no brush, like everybody's in different positions. I wouldn't even dare to say, oh, it doesn't apply to us because, most of us don't have property. I wouldn't even say that, because actually, as an accountant, I have the privilege of getting to meet and speak to a lot of people. And yes, I speak to a lot of people who don't have that much, but I also speak to a lot of people who have a lot as well. And when we talk about things like, again, general statistics, average salary is 30K across the whole of UK. But actually in London, what is the average salary? And actually with the Black community, there are some people who earn extremely high. I'm talking 200K, 300K salaries, not just 100K. And yes, there are some people who are in the 30s and the 20s and stuff. But so yeah, I can't give a specific answer to say how the budget directly affects all of those people. Maybe if we zoom down a little bit, we can talk about it on that level.
Yep. I'm glad that you see what we're trying to do here. So yeah, it's thing one, talk about how the budget affects us as a community. Thing two is talk about it in a way which engages the community. And then thing three is looking forward to 2026, because at the time of recording is December. How can we as a community navigate the economy next year? And that's what I was hoping to speak to you.
Yeah.
So there are lots of changes made in the UK budget. I would argue that let's start from the very, very beginning. What is the autumn budget, and why should the Black British community care about it?
So the autumn budget is, as you mentioned earlier, it is basically where the Chancellor, who, by the way, the Chancellor is kind of, in simple English, I'd say the head of finance for the country, for the nation, for the United Kingdom. So the Chancellor, the head of finance for UK, she or he, we have a she now, she comes up with a plan, a forecast, an intention. So I'm looking at, it's like, as I'll talk about it as an individual, and then we're going to scale it up to the nation. So it's like you in November saying, okay, where am I as an individual? Oh, I owe this credit card. Oh, I need to pay for my child's healthcare bills. Oh, I plan to go on holiday. Oh, I'm getting married next year. Oh, I want to buy a house. Oh, by the way, I still got my student loan to pay. So it's, if you, as an individual, that's the kind of thing you would do. You would assess yourself, right? And you'd say, okay, based on all these things that I've just mentioned, how much am I being paid now? I'm being paid £1,000 a month. Obviously, hopefully not, but I'm being paid £1,000 a month for all these things I need to do: pay my bills, pay my student loan, save for my wedding, go on holiday, pay for my children's whatever. How can I maximize my £1,000 salary? So now, if we scale that up on the national level, what the Chancellor is saying is, right, okay, where are we as a country? How much do we owe? So you will hear things like, oh, the deficit. The deficit is basically whereby the government has been borrowing to keep the nation alive, to pay for things like welfare, pay for things like free childcare, to pay for things like the NHS. So, oh, we've got the deficit. Oh, we also need to spend on security, anti-terrorism type, defenses and stuff like that, so we don't get bombed or whatever. Oh, we've got the NHS there. So we've got all of these things. So the Chancellor sits down and says, as a nation, these are all the things that we need to pay for. These are the things we owe. These are the companies or countries that owe us. These are the countries that we owe, and so they're sitting down and then they're saying, okay, so based on all of these things, how much do we even bring in as a nation? And bringing in is obviously from the taxes. The government itself does not produce anything. What they have is a system of employees, of citizens. They have citizens who, most of them are employees, and so they take their tax, and that's how they get their money. So now the government is saying, right, we've got all these things that we owe, all these things we need to do, and we've also got all of these citizens that we get X amount from. And so their responsibility is to say, how much do we even get? And I'm going to make up a number. Let's just say, from all the people, we get £1 trillion every year, or whatever period they decide.
Rounding up, it's about that.
Yeah. Okay, I made that up. So 1 trillion. And so now they're saying, okay, for all of these things that we need to do, the defense, the NHS, the free childcare, the whatever, the bills, the interest, whatever, how can we use this 1 trillion? And as part of that exercise, what they often find, which is why we have government borrowing, is that the 1 trillion is not enough. And this happens in many societies. The 1 trillion is not enough. So part of that exercise, they also say, which is what you would do as an individual. If you did, going back to that first example where I said you've got the £1,000 salary, you need to pay for all these things, and you realize, actually, I can't afford it. You might say, do you know what? I think I need to get another job. Or you might say, I need to get a pay increase. Or you might say, I don't know, I need to share with someone so that my bills are lower. In that same exercise, the Chancellor, the government, and like I say, I'm simplifying this into like everyday example. The Chancellor is saying, do you know what? We can't afford this. How else can we get some more money? And so as part of that exercise, the Chancellor might say, if we increase taxes by 2%, we can get an extra 500,000. If we do this by this, we can get an extra 5 billion. And so the autumn budget, a very long way of saying it, is basically the outcome of that exercise. The outcome of the exercise of how much we owe, how much we bring in, and how we're going to potentially cover any shortfalls for the next foreseeable future. And you will see, like I say, they might say, they will say from next to April, because the financial year is April to April. But some of the things they might say from 2027 or from 2028. And they might bring in policies to say, based on our forecast, we're going to do this implementation, i.e. freeze the tax thresholds, until 2031. So they tend to make plans for at least 1 to 5 years. And of course, in between you have general elections and stuff like that, which may mean that other chancellors in the future may come and change some of those things. But ultimately, that's what it's about.
Yeah, love the explanation. And I'd like to stay with this freezing of the tax thresholds. So when we look at the Black population in the UK, about half of us live in London. So how is the community likely to be affected by the freezing of tax thresholds until 2031? Given that London is where salaries are highest.
Exactly. So first I'll talk about just the general impact of freezing of tax thresholds, and then the London effect and the Black community in the London area. So ultimately, what happens when you freeze tax thresholds? Freezing of tax thresholds is basically saying the tax-free element, which is currently 12,570, the basic rate element, which is paying 20% on income up to 50,000, the 40% tax on income above 50,270 all the way up to 125, and the higher rate or additional rate tax bracket, which is 45% on income above 125k. What they're basically saying is it is going to stay like that. We're not changing it. We're not increasing it. We're not decreasing it. On paper, it seems like a good thing, but in reality, on the other side of the coin, you have what we call inflation. Inflation is the cost of goods going up over time. It is not a bad thing. It is good to have a little bit of inflation because it indicates growth and all of that over time. However, you've got inflation, which is normally what salaries are linked to. So any decent organization will give you a basic pay rise, usually in line with inflation. Also, not just the income that is adjusted by inflation, but you have bills. So most people, especially if you're like on contracts and stuff like that, you will see around January to April every year, you probably get an email saying, by the way, your bill has increased to X amount. Why? Because they're having to pay, increased costs for things. And so things like a phone bill, it might start off at £30 or £50 or whatever it is. They might say, oh, do you know what? From April, it's going to be £52 for the same exact service. So you've got that happening on the other side. So thresholds are frozen. Salary is increasing because of cost of living. Goods are increasing. Salary is increasing. What it means is that although you are getting more salary, because the cost of goods are increasing, more of that extra salary that you are getting is actually being taxed at a higher rate. What do I mean by that? In year one today, for example, you earn £60,000. 12,570 is tax-free. The other amounts are taxed in 40%. That £60,000 can buy you, I don't know, I'm going to make this up, a house, a decent meal, and clothes, new clothes, 2 new items every month. And I'm making this up. Now, you've gotten a pay rise from your employer. Your employer says, yeah, okay, you've done well. And because of inflation, we know things are going up. We're going to increase your salary year 2 to 65,000. Ideally, the tax-free element of 12,570 should have also increased in line with inflation to keep you at the same level. But because it hasn't increased, the extra 5K now is being taxed at 40%, one. And then number two, the cost of goods are increasing. So now that 5,000 that has also been taxed at 40% can no longer buy you what it used to buy you. And so now on paper, you feel like you have an increased salary of 65,000. Last year it was 60,000. You should be feeling like I can buy more in year 2. But somehow it's not mooring. You're not able to you're not
More
able
is
to
not
do
mooring.
it. More
Yeah.
is not mooring. And that's because the cost of goods are going up. So the higher although your salary is going higher, which again, now bringing in the London element, tends to happen, especially in the London area, and the cost of goods tend to go up in the London area higher, your increase in salary is not reflecting an increase in lifestyle. It's not reflecting an increase in purchasing power. Your purchasing power actually is probably worse. Best case is going to be the same, but actually it's worse because the inflation is higher and the tax thresholds and all of those bands have not adjusted in line with inflation. Basically.
Yeah. So I'm still trying to come up with the best analogy I can for the freezing of tax thresholds and how it interacts with inflation. But as you've just explained, when you live in an inflationary system, the price of stuff has to go up every year. And in the UK, they want it to go up by 2% every year.
Yeah.
And as you say, inflation's not bad as long as wages also go up as well.
Exactly.
But if you freeze the bands at which salaries are taxed, the way I almost imagine it is like you have a young child. That child is going to grow by an inch every year.
Exactly.
If you keep the size of their clothes the same
That's a good one.
for 6 years,
The
then
child is growing. They're eating more food. You're
Yeah.
giving them more food.
yeah,
The child is
but
growing.
you're like, we're going to keep your shoes the same for 6 years.
Got
That's
some
going
tight
That's
shoes.
going to be a painful situation in 6 years'
I'm
time.
going to
And
use that one. I hope you don't mind.
no, go for it. I'll invoice you later. So that would be a painful situation, and that's essentially what's been announced on us. And I feel like if more people understood the implications of policies like that, I think people would be a lot more animated.
Exactly. They should be. The reason why people are not animated is because they're not engaging with the system. You can't engage with the system that you can't, have an opinion about a system that you don't engage with and that you don't understand. And this goes back into the point 3 where you said, how can our community engage more with this? Hopefully listening to people like us that try to simplify it into simple English, because to be fair, even I get bored looking and listening to the budget. Like it's boring. Let's be honest. So you want someone who can animate it and give you funny examples like the child's clothes staying the same, but like you said, I dare to, when you say the word animated, I see it in 2 ways. I see animated in the sense that actually you might be more willing to oppose and speak up and say, no, government, you need to change or you need to do something. Or animated, not even towards the government, because this is the approach I take. And why I say let me not say I never, but I don't fancy being a politician. For me, I'm like, if that's what you're going to do, then I'm going to adjust. And so my form of animation is making decisions and doing things that positively affect me in line with whatever you've said. You can deal with any situation as long as you understand it, right? And so I would say, for example, now with these frozen thresholds, rather than just sitting there and just hoping for the best, or rather than just pursuing salary increase, you need to be thinking about how to increase your income, but not just how to increase your income, how to invest in a way that combats both inflation and the stagnation of those thresholds, so that ultimately, whilst you might not get the leeway and the what should I call it? There's a word I'm looking for. You might not get the leeway and the disposable income in the typical way that you have may have planned via salaries. You're getting your disposable income from a different source that is not necessarily directly tied to all of these other tax thresholds and stuff like that.
We're going to come back to that, but you also mentioned the cost of living. Why is inflation particularly pernicious for people in the population who come from lower income backgrounds, particularly when that inflation affects things like rents, bills, groceries, and so on?
Yeah. So I just talked about disposable income for anyone who doesn't understand that term. So disposable income is basically the difference between your salary level, regardless of what that is, and your what should I say, your necessities, like your bills, your food, your rent, your heating, those kinds of things that you absolutely have to pay for. Now, for a population or for a group of people, regardless of race, actually, who are earning lower salaries, what happens is that the percentage of disposable income you have is much smaller. And that is indirectly also saying because a higher amount of your expenses, a higher amount of your salary goes on expenses. So I'll give two examples. You have somebody who earns, again, very basic, £1,000 a month, and their bills are £900 a month. They literally have £100 disposable
To play
income.
with.
But you've got someone who has £5,000 salary and their bills are maybe 2,500. 2,500 is still higher than the £900 a month, but as a percentage, it's only 50% of that person's salary. Whereas the £900 is 90% of that person's salary. So you have the £2,500 a month expenses on a £5,000 salary. That's 50%. That person has another £2,500 to play with. Right. Now, like you said, inflation, bills are going up. When bills are going up for both people, because they both need to eat, they both need to have heating, they both need to live in some kind of accommodation. Inflation is going up. I'm going to use a number like 10% because it's going to be easy for me to do the mental maths. Inflation has gone up by 10% for both of these people. What is the effect on person one? 10% inflation means that £900 bills have now become £990. So now this person only has £10 disposable income. Now, 10% inflation on 2,500 expenses is now means that this person's bills are 2,750. That person still has £2,250 to play with.
Yep.
So when the inflation is eating, both of them are having to pay the cost. However, this person can cushion it more, whereas this person cannot. And so for lower earners, where you have higher a proportion of your salary going for basic necessities, it is harder. And this is where you come to the cost of living crisis, which has happened in the last couple of years, where actually the example that I gave, where it was 990, what has happened is that the inflation has even increased bills beyond people's earning capacity. And so you're finding that more and more people are having to go into credit cards. More and more people are having to use loans to pay for everyday items, which should have never been the case. In an ideal economy, at least the wages that people are earning should be able to cover basic living expenses. Now, obviously, that's a broad brush. There may be some people in this £1,000 category who are driving Mercedes Benzes rather than driving a Ford Fiesta, or and so there might be some people who like to do things that maybe their budget is not in line, and so they should be cutting their budget. But ultimately, the crisis comes when people are even not doing those kinds of crazy things, and the salary is still not stretching for the basic necessities.
Emphasis on the living in the cost of living.
Yeah, exactly.
Not cost of
living.
yeah.
Exactly, not cost of luxury.
Luxury crisis.
Yeah.
So let's return then to policies which aim to squeeze the ways that everyone earns, like salaries, like the freezing of tax bands. You alluded to learning how to invest and how to earn incomes in ways which help you to sit outside of that. Could you give a couple of examples?
Yeah. So before I say this, I'm going to caveat. This is obviously going to be, for example, in the example that I just gave, this is going to be really for people who have that extra disposable income, because if you're in a cost of living crisis, you almost probably don't have much to invest, anything to invest, or if you do, it's going to be very little. Having said that, no matter what level you are at, I would say you should invest something. You may not be able to invest £1,000 like Mr. Joe over here, but if you can invest 100, go for it. Now, in terms of boxes, wrappers, things that are outside of those typical salary bands. What do I mean now? I'm talking about things like limited companies, whereby you can have a side hustle / business. I call them the same thing, that the income is not being paid via your PAYE. It's going into a limited company that you have set up. And when it's going into that company, it means that you can spend from there at different outside of your 9-to-5 salary. And I emphasize, just in case, I've been saying this for the past couple of years, but just in case you don't know, you can be an employee and have a limited company at the same time. You can also have a limited company and still be self-employed at the same time. It's not one or the other. And I think that's one of the things that many people do not have not realized, that you don't have to belong to one box. And I was saying this the other day, you should try to get the best of all the boxes. Anyways, we won't go into that because I'll digress. But yeah, get the best of all the boxes. So if you have a limited company now and you're making money in this limited company, in addition to your salary, it means that there are certain things that you'll be able to pay for via your limited company that your salary doesn't have to pay for. So talking about, the inflation on the cost of goods and goods and services, there might be some of those things that you might actually be able to have as a business expense. For example, your mobile phone. If you're using your mobile phone for your business and you are doing social media, your emails, your calls, and all of that for your business, there's no reason why you can't get a business contract. And so now your business, your limited company, is paying for your mobile phone bill rather than your salary. Does it mean that you can never use your business phone for your personal life? Of course not. Once you've paid for it, you've paid for it. Minutes are limitless. We're not doing, what was that 5-day pass that we used to do back in the day?
You're taking it back.
We're not doing that anymore. We're not paying for minutes. We're not paying per call. So once you've got it in the business, my salary is not paying for my phone. It's in my limited company. So that's just one example. But imagine doing that multiple times. That's what the rich do. You don't want to be in a situation where it's only your salary that's paying for things. You want to have another source of income. And then to top it off, when you've got your limited company, not only are you able to expense certain things that mean that your salary doesn't have to pay for it, and you're giving yourself more leeway and more disposable income over here, you're also, when you do pay tax, because tax is going to be a thing that you have to pay, you're paying it at a lower rate. 19% in comparison with 20 and 40%. You don't need me to do maths for you. It's one is cheaper, better, easier than the other. So that's an example of ways that people can try and avoid the typical PAYE system.
Okay, so don't just rely upon 9-to-5 income. See if you can diversify your income sources.
Absolutely.
But in the autumn budget, the government also announced tax rises on dividends, savings, and property. So why would they do that?
Because regardless of the tax rises, it is still, and there are still benefits. And that's why I say get the best of both worlds. So the tax rises, just to be clear, in your limited company, you will only pay tax on profit. So if you have genuine business expenses, so the tax, for example, you might be talking about is going to be the dividend tax. So just to be clear, again, for anyone who doesn't know, dividend tax is what you pay on money that you take out of the company and you bring it into your personal name. Depending on where your total income as an individual sits, you may either be paying 8.75% tax if you're in the basic rate, or you might be paying 33.75% tax if you are in the higher rate. That has increased by 2%. So from 2027, I believe it is, it's going to be 10.75% at the basic rate, and it's going to be 35.75% at the higher rate. Now, that's just for the factual situation. That 33.5% or whatever percentage you're in, depending on your year, is only paid on money that you take out. When I talked about paying for your mobile phone bill, I didn't talk about taking any money out.
Expenses.
It's an expense.
Yeah.
And when I talked about the 19% corporation tax, I'm not talking about 19% corporation tax on revenue. It's on the bottom line.
Yeah.
So you can have your revenue, make all your sales up here. You've got your mobile phone bill. You've got all the other genuine business expenses going through. If you are smart enough and you get your bill all the way down to zero, because don't forget, you've got your 9-to-5 potentially that you might be living off, you might not pay any tax because you've expensed sensibly. I'm not saying go crazy, but you've expensed genuinely and sensibly to the point that there is no tax to pay. And you can still do that with things like even pensions, because as a company owner, as a director, you can put money into your pension, and that's a valid business expense. I had a customer who did that. She had a 9-to-5 job, which was decent paying, and then she had her limited company, which was earning quite a decent amount as well. Did all the mathematics. She found out she would potentially have about between 25 to 30k profit at the end of the year. She paid £25,000 from her business straight into her pension. She had no tax to pay that year. These are some of the things that people are doing that means that they're still benefiting. And don't get me wrong, you will do the work. So if you're going to have a business, you're going to run that business and make money. But these are things that people are doing whereby they are getting the best of both worlds.
When we look at the median age of the Black British population, we have a younger median age relative to the country. So the average age in the country is around 44. For the Black
I love your
population,
statistics, by the way.
it's 32. And if you're mixed, you're even younger still, you're on average 19.
Oh, wow. That's a
Median
big
age
jump.
of 19. So looking at policies like the increase of the national minimum and living wage, how's this likely to affect us?
So because of the ages that you just mentioned, 44, 32, and 19, actually, and this is no disrespect to anybody, but most people that earn at the like minimum wage level tend to be younger people, right?
Yeah.
They're just entering into the employment market. And so that does mean that increase in that wage will actually benefit, from the statistics that you've given, is going to benefit the mixed race, mixed people, and the potentially, if there is anyone just entering the market at the 32 level, those people more, as opposed to people who are higher earners who have already superseded that minimum wage. So in a way, I guess you could argue it's a good thing. But if you want to look at that 32 number, though, I would say that it probably is not going to impact as many as it would in terms of the mix, and actually, or even the Caucasians. Now, having said that, though, I think that you've talked about ages, but I think it has to do that minimum wage policy is less about race, and more about location. So because we talked about it, in London, wages tend to be higher anyway because cost of living is higher. If you want your employees to come to work in London, you need to pay them a decent wage that means they can live in London, right? So I think that policy in particular is probably going to was more targeted towards people in regions where the salaries were lower anyway.
I agree. Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
The cash ISA allowance has been cut from 20,000 to 12,000 from April 2027. What are your thoughts on this?
I don't think it's a bad thing right now. I'm happy that the total allowance, the total ISA allowance, at the 20K level, in total, is still there. What they're basically saying is that you can save up to 20K in an ISA, but 8K of it has to be invested, and 12 can be in cash. I don't think it's a bad thing because ultimately, people should really invest some of their money. And I say that in terms of everything we just talked about, inflation and all of those things. Saving it alone may not always beat inflation. And because of the time value of money, your money is actually decreasing over time. So I think it's a good thing to encourage people to invest a little bit more. I do, however, think that there's a responsibility for the government to ensure that people are adequately educated to know how to do that. Not just educated to know how to do that, but incentives that help people understand that they should be investing over a longer period of time. Because the cash ISA allowance, for example, is renewed every year. The basic person who doesn't do the research may think that, okay, so if I invest for that year, I should automatically get some kind of big increase. You may invest in a year where the stock market is down. And so that kind of person could be upset. Like, the government said I should, put more money into investment. I invested £10,000 and now my £10,000 is £8,000. The stock market is a long-term investment plan. And so this is where things like the understanding, the responsibility, or they should come up with instruments that allow people to invest in a 12-month period that actually beat inflation, if that makes sense. So rather than just saying, oh, cash can only be 12K, you must invest the other and it should be in stocks and shares. Actually, how about you think about a new kind of investment instrument that allows people, because the allowance is every year, that allows people to be sure that if I invest my money for a 12-month period, I will absolutely get a positive thing back. Because I'm concerned about the people that will invest and maybe just for that short period, the money doesn't look good, or, it performs bad, hopefully not, but and then they go crazy like, the government is against me, they're after me. Investing is a good thing if done properly with the right knowledge and the right information and the right things in place. So I think that the government should be more creative actually and come up with more financial instruments to encourage investment, not just changing allowances.
So would that be some sort of high interest fixed rate savings
Yeah.
account,
They
tax
came up they
sheltered.
came up with things like the LISA, they came up with like the right to buy, those kinds of new things that didn't exist before,
Mm.
but encourage people in a certain direction. Yeah.
Mm. I've seen lots of people talking about the £2 million mansion tax.
Lots of people.
Yeah.
You got lots of friends that live in £2 million houses.
Well, in terms of on socials, talking about the policy,
Yeah.
do you think it's likely to hit most people?
So absolutely not going to hit most people. But my concern is that it's not going to hit most people today. But I just feel that my concern is that it's setting a precedent for the future. I feel, talking about the budget as a whole, including the mansion tax, I feel that the Chancellor was testing a few things. And I think that where she's playing the long-term game.
Okay.
And what do I mean by that? So I talked about this on literally just last week on a different podcast. So you see, for example, increasing the dividend tax by 2%, the saving by 2%, the landlord tax by 2%. I think ultimately she probably wanted to increase the basic allowance and the higher allowance by 2% as well. But by testing the waters with this first, if in 2027 she then comes out and says, "Oh yes, we've decided to increase," even though I know it's frozen, but for example, it's like your it's like an appetizer. If then in the future they came out and said, "Oh, by the way, basic allowance is now increasing from 20 to 22%," I feel like there would be less argument about it because you've already seen a slight increase in a different place, if that makes sense.
Oh, like breadcrumbing.
Yes.
I agree. Because last autumn budget, I remember lots of things were frozen until 2027, 2028.
So how come now it's 2031?
And I was like, what's going to happen in 2028? I felt like the world was going to end in 2028 or something, and like we
And
just
we
weren't
didn't
being
know
told.
about.
Like,
Exactly.
and then this year it's like,
So maybe they always wanted to do it to 2030.
yeah, but you
And
do it bit by
yeah.
bit. Because you know when I last saw this? COVID.
Exactly.
First it was like
5 years ago.
wash your hands. Then it was like, okay, keep space. And then it was like,
Don't go out.
yeah. And then it was like, you must stay at home. Like,
Literally.
but it was done in stages.
And you must take this vaccine.
Yeah.
You must do this. That's literally what I feel like it is. Yeah, breadcrumbing. I didn't know about that term. And so just going back to the mansion tax, it's breadcrumbing. Today it's £2 million houses. Tomorrow it's £1 million houses. The next year it's £500,000 houses. And then they just invent a new tax like they've done with the electric vehicles, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's here to stay, and it's going to hit everybody, but it's little by little, because if you can get people, especially, and this is such a political, I don't like politics. It's such a political move. Because if you can get the majority of people to say, yeah, those people with £2 million houses, yeah, charge them, because that's sometimes what they do, right? Yeah, charge them. When they now reduce the rate, you can't just turn around now and be like, oh no, don't charge them anymore. So they've got your buy-in by it's what do you do with when you're fishing? The hook and the bait. It's the bait. They've got you on their side. Yeah, charge those people with £2 million houses. And so what when they say 1 million, when they say 500,000, by the way, especially for London houses, what are you going to say? You can't argue with it. So I feel like it's a tax that's going to grow and expand. It's like when they do the tolls. Did you know that the Dartford toll was only supposed to be there for a certain number of years? You know, the Dartford crossing, for anyone who drives. The idea was that they would charge you £1 or £2, whatever it was, back in 1991 when they built the bridge, for a number of years to recoup the money for building the bridge. Why is it that we're still paying the Dartford toll till today? Not only are we still paying the Dartford toll till today, the prices have increased over time. Once they bring in a new tax, it ain't going nowhere.
I mean,
and it's only going to expand to more people.
Income tax was temporary at one point.
Yeah.
It's like the biggest direct tax that we have.
It never went away, and it ain't going nowhere.
We can't just be in a 6-year holding pattern though, Benedicta. Like,
in my opinion, it's lazy policy. It's lazy policy. It's a cop-out. Like, you can do better. Like I said, come up with new instruments that will give you the money that you're looking for. Don't just play around, tinker with the same ones, if that makes sense. It's safe as well.
Can I ask you a question that I have not prepped you on at all? If you were Chancellor and you had to bring in a policy to promote economic growth in the UK between now and the end of the decade, what would you bring in?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked me this question. I'm a business person through and through. I love business and I love when business is done well. When you do business well, money flows without asking. If you offer the right service at the right level to the right audience, you don't have to ask them for money. They are literally trying to chuck it at you. So if you want money to flow through an economy, what you do is you create products and services that, number one, meet people's needs, and number two, that is at the right level of value that is affordable for different ranges. So there's something called like the value ladder. In every business, you should have products that are at like an entry level. And by the way, entry level doesn't mean it has to be £1 or £2. Entry level for your business can be 25k and you can have a 100k service. So in every business, in every industry, you provide services that are meeting genuine needs of people at the right level. People will pay and money will flow. You won't need to create policies to tax income and all of that, because if you keep the tax reasonable as well, people don't mind. Oh yeah, if I earn $1 million, I have to pay X amount, but it's easy for me to earn the $1 million. What is happening now is that there's no you're increasing taxes, but I have no incentive to earn £1 more than what I'm earning today. And so yes, you're increasing, but you're eating into the same one bucket, which is why I say it's lazy policy and it's lazy economic planning. Think and put in place things that will encourage business and entrepreneurship. And I was saying this, like, sometimes they put in all these policies, like I say, breadcrumbing. You're trying to get the masses to be against the people at the top, against the Googles and the Amazons and the whatever, against the millionaires. I said this on another podcast. A millionaire does not become a millionaire by sitting on his butt all day. A millionaire becomes a millionaire by deploying themselves and other people, resources into the economy, so that resources are flowing to them that has made them to be a millionaire. There's no millionaire that's just a millionaire for doing nothing. Obviously, yes, there are people that inherit it, but ultimately I'm talking about people self-made millionaires. So instead of trying to get the lower people who are earning lower to hate the people that are earning more, what you should do is be trying to get the lower people who are on lower salaries, teach them and encourage them, put policies in place, encourage business, encourage entrepreneurship that will make them be able to earn like that person. And the tax will flow anyway, because now people are earning more money. The other thing as well is not just about the so-called poorer people or whatever, but it's also about the attacking big businesses. You kill small businesses. So look at the high street. Have you been to high streets recently?
I'm from Croydon, Benedicta, so...
Croydon was already, before there was issues, Croydon, the high street was already had a question mark around it. And I live close to Milton Keynes. Some of these high street, empty shops everywhere. Even the big shops are closing down. How are you going to, don't get me wrong, I know a lot of businesses also moved online, so that's also part of it. But imagine if our high streets were bubbling again. Imagine if there was, reasons to go to the high street and spend money. They did, after COVID, when they wanted everybody to go outside before the second lockdown, they said, eat out to help out. They wanted people to go outside because they know when you go outside, you spend money. Do policies that will make people go outside. Do you get what I mean? As opposed to just trying to eat from the same one pie. Just make the pie bigger. So yeah, that's what I would do if I was a chancellor. I would help put in place policies that encourage businesses to grow, to expand, encourage people to want to work. So a lot of innovation type things. So, AI and all these kinds of things, technology, I would be pumping money into those things. The young people, the Gen Zs and the next generation coming after them, they don't want to sit in an office all day. Honestly, it's boring. They want to be out there. So I would be trying to even do like user research, like smaller groups. Like, what do you like to do? What would make you want to come into what would make you want to come into the city? We should be making new jobs, new roles in line with the passion and the desire of the younger generation, so that we can get them engaged in society. Because once they're engaged, they are ultimately, they say the kids are the future of tomorrow. They are ultimately the ones that are going to prop up the economy tomorrow. So stop trying to tax their parents and think about how you can make these younger ones be more engaged and bring more money into the economy.
Here. Love that answer. I came up with the same analogy. I feel like we've got a pie and we're like, how can we divide it even smaller pieces rather than just growing the pie?
Literally.
And you can make tax in either way. But the thing is, we have an enormous opportunity at the moment with AI, with clean energy, with biotechnology, and perhaps with some much older industries, which if you just modernize them, would be revitalized and would make more money, where we could actually do something with this country. This country has a history of inventing things and coming up with things
The Industrial
like
Revolution.
global systems.
Mhm,
Like the reason why the metro is called the metro all over the world is because the Metropolitan line was the first tube line. And it kind of feels to me like the UK has given up a little bit. And it's
Yeah,
just like, you know what? Let's just raise tax and just
literally.
keep raising it
And
and
keep
just keep
raising it.
freezing and
Don't invent anything. Don't produce. How many things, before there used to be a time where it was like made in Great Britain. It really stood for something like
Mm,
all over the world. I can't remember the last time I heard somebody proud about something that was made in Great Britain, probably because there's less and less things every time,
mm,
every year being made in Great Britain. You think about even car manufacturing. The car manufacturing industry was big. You think about Ford, and there's this other one I remember, MG Rover,
mm,
that doesn't really happen anymore. And I
yeah,
guess you might argue, some people are arguing that, oh, it's because everything is now made in China. Yeah, but there's something that China is doing
mm,
that we need to clearly learn from.
mm,
And I say that obviously, I'm not a politician, all other caveats involved. I know there might be other things, but if someone is doing something well, don't just hate them and again tax their imports. No, why don't you go find out what they're doing that's making their economy grow? That means that they've now become a competition to you.
yeah.
We talk about how people are moving, like leaving the UK in their thousands and their hundreds to places like Dubai. Dubai was a desert. But when you go to Dubai now, it don't look like no desert. They have innovated, they have built. I remember being in Dubai and looking at one of the buildings whereby they had two different buildings, but then they had something like I don't know whether to call it a connecting type thing, and it was connecting one to the. I was like, just looking at it, I was like, this is amazing. Like,
Yeah,
who
you can
thought
do
about
that.
you
Yeah.
can do that? This is and it looks so innovative. Like, just by innovating and producing and creating it and making an environment friendly, people have flocked there from all over the world, not just from the United Kingdom. We need to stop being so myopic in our thinking and
Yeah.
think bigger.
Yeah, I went to Saudi. That was going to be my next question to you, like what your views were of people leaving the UK. I went to Saudi in mid-September, and yeah, the optimism, Saudi, I would say, is largely desert now,
Mm-hmm.
but there's cranes everywhere. So they're built every 10 minutes, they're building another Canary Wharf.
Wow.
Every 10 minutes, another Canary Wharf, another mall.
Saudi is the next Dubai.
Yeah.
I've been saying that I think Dubai government don't come for me. But I think Dubai is probably a bit oversaturated now. Like, I think if you're going to Dubai now, you might have missed the wave.
Well,
But
you wanna catch a place when it's going
just when
from
it's
there
going
to
up.
there. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I feel like Dubai has reached its peak. And don't get me wrong, you can still do amazing things, but I feel like now they're starting to have to curb how people come in. There is more traffic. They're bringing in few policies here. They're actually bringing in tax over a certain level. Again, just like in the UK, I'm sure once it's there, it ain't going nowhere. It will just get, smaller and smaller. And so Saudi is like where Dubai was like 10 years ago. Don't quote me on the years, but you know what I mean. And so I think that's probably and Abu Dhabi as well. And I know that you can easily get into Dubai from these places as well. So yeah, I would say people don't necessarily need to go to Dubai. They can go to other places, and actually not just the Middle East. I have customers who have moved to Europe, places in Europe, Portugal, Spain. Also people who have moved from the UK to Canada. So it doesn't have to be an Arab nation, but if that will work for you, why not?
Mm. Yeah, I love speaking with you about this stuff, Benedicta, because you break it down, you make it really easy to understand. But I also like that you don't just talk about problems, you also highlight things that people can do and that the government can also do as
Mm,
well. So just by way of conclusion, before we go to the final question that goes to all guests, when we look forward to 2026,
mm.
how can we as a community best navigate the economy?
So absolutely being proactive and active. I know we don't like engaging with some of the typical content out there, but you do need to engage. Like, you need to understand what's going on. And like I say, people like yourself, myself, there's so many finance, thank God for social media, YouTube and all of that, that means that content is readily available. Thank God for things like ChatGPT where you can research and all of that. So I would say, number one, just getting your information, getting your facts right, and then reassessing your situation and making the best of every pot that is available. Like I said, the best of being an employee, I didn't talk about it, but things like employee benefits that allow you to have private healthcare, I think that is second to none. Oh my gosh. Like, anyways. So
Life
the
insurance as
life
well. Life
insurance and all
insurance
of
can
those kinds
cost
of
quite a
things.
lot on a monthly,
Exactly.
yeah.
But if you have a job that gives you those benefits, why not go for it? And then the things we already talked about, business, being a landlord, whatever it is, I just think that with your research, you can then see, okay, I can get a little bit of relief here. I can get some benefits here. Don't be so one box minded. The time of one stream income and maybe just one property, it is over. Like, it's a necessity to have multiple streams of income. And even in your business or even in your endeavors, you should have multiple streams, within that one business. So multiple streams. And then beyond that, I'm going to take that to another scale. We just talked about different countries. I think that people should be looking to invest globally. Again, the time of, oh, I was born in the United Kingdom, lived in the United Kingdom, got married in the United Kingdom, had my children in the United Kingdom, got old in the United Kingdom, retired in the United Kingdom, died in the United. Those years are over. Like, people are moving the world literally is your oyster. And so I think that you need to explore other places where maybe even with your skills, you might be able to potentially do better. I'm not going to be the one to tell you where you should move to, but potentially you might find that actually, because I know some people who have said, actually, do you know what? We're going to move to XYZ place for a number of years, and then we're going to come back to the UK. There are people who have said, actually, I'm going to do it whilst my children are this age or until I have kids. And then when I have kids, I'm going to... So it's making the best of all the world. The UK still, within reason, again, don't quote me, still has a decent, very, educational system, especially from a free point of view, the fact that you don't have to pay for it. A lot of people that are moving to places like Dubai having to pay for their children's education. You don't have to pay here. You might be in a situation where you're early stage, you might not be married, you might be single, whatever. You might say, actually, I'm going to do that. But you know what? I don't want to be dealing with paying for education. I'll come back to the UK and get my children, if you're planning to have children, into a certain kind of school. So do your research and make the best of every possible opportunity that is available to you, which may mean being flexible. It may mean that you are not Solomon Grundy. It may mean that, you move here, you move there, and you move there, but make the best. But one thing I would say, wherever you go, put down roots, invest. You never know when you might be in another country and it's your investment in Africa or it's your investment in Canada that you're able to draw on. I hear a lot of people, especially Africans, because we've talked about, black people a lot, Africans selling their whole life, everything they've ever worked for in life, in Nigeria, in other African countries, and coming to the UK because of some promise of XYZ kind of visa and XYZ kind of salary. That, I'm sorry, is folly. Just because you're moving one country to the next does not mean you have to sell everything here. If I was to move to another country tomorrow, I'm not selling my properties. Those properties should be giving me income whilst I'm in the other country. And best believe when I'm in the other country, I'm going to be looking for how to buy another property so that in case I move to another country, then I've got properties from both countries. Do you get what I mean? Like, don't think about, there should be no box. Don't live inside a box and inside some kind of old ideal world. One of my mentors, mother mentors, she said one time, and I would never forget the phrase, and I'll stop talking here. She said that in times and seasons of change, many people find themselves gloriously decked for a world that no longer exists. Make sure that that is not you. The world has changed and you have to change.
And on that note, the question that goes to all guests, what does black wealth mean to you?
When you put it like that, black wealth, obviously, I'm thinking about the community. Black wealth means that, you see how I talked about they've created policies, but they didn't think about how this would affect our circle of people. Black wealth is whereby, as a community as a whole, we are earning enough, engaging enough in a system and within an economy in any nation of the world, whether that's UK, Canada, Dubai, wherever. So we're earning enough, we're engaging, we are educated enough to be able to engage and make it because of the money that's flowing within us, the size, the quality of people and businesses and things that are coming out of us is on a scale that we can't be ignored. And so when people that make policies, they have to check in with us.
Mm.
They have to say, actually, how is this going to affect this group of people? Because, you know, if this happens and this happens, we might lose this, we might lose that. And beyond Black wealth is also having us at the table or creating our own table. That's what I would say.
Yeah. Benedicta, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me, as always.